Today is Maundy Thursday. Maundy Thursday of Holy Week is a day that we remember that Jesus had his Last Supper with his disciples, and then he went to the Garden of Gethsemane and the Mount of Olives. And I want to take a minute and talk about the biggest sign, the biggest symbol that we see in both the Passover and the garden. We need to understand the signs. And the sign that we see in both of these stories is the cup. The cup. In the Passover story, Jesus is having Passover with his disciples, which would involve drinking a few cups of wine over the course of the meal as they read scriptures and sang songs and ate together. And Jesus, towards the end of that meal, takes the cup and he re-signs it. He says, this cup represents a new covenant. It represents the forgiveness of sins. It represents my blood poured out for you. Whenever you do it in remembrance of me. He gives new meaning to this cup. A few hours later, Jesus and his disciples are pulling an all-nighter in the Garden of Gethsemane. And soldiers will come to arrest Jesus eventually, but as he's in the garden, he is under the weight of so much. He's under the weight of my sin, the weight of your sin, of all the brokenness of our world, all of our luggage and baggage we carry around with us. He was feeling that night so much that he was sweating drops of blood. His body had turned on him. And he cries out to the Father in the midst of this tremendous amount of suffering. And he says to the Father, Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. I don't want to drink it. I can't handle this cup. This cup is too much. Take it from me. But then he says something very important. Yet not what I will, but what you will. And what we see in that evening is that Jesus resolves himself to the will of the Father to take the cup. And what kind of cup did he take? What's he talking about here? Well, in the First Testament, the Old Testament scriptures, there's two types of cups we see. Throughout the Old Testament, throughout the Psalms and the prophetic writings, we see two cups. One cup is the cup of divine blessing and fellowship. But the other cup is the cup of divine judgment and wrath. A few scriptures about these cups. First, the cup of divine blessing and fellowship. We see this idea in Psalm 16:5. It says, Lord, you alone are my portion and my cup. You make my lot secure. Psalm 23. We see this prayer, you anoint my head with oil, my cup, it overflows. And then Psalm 116:13, I will lift up the cup of salvation and call on the name of the Lord. There is this cup of divine blessing and fellowship, of a cup that is poured out that results in goodness and grace. But then there's another cup. There's the cup of judgment, of wrath. Psalm 75 verse 8 says, in the hand of the Lord is a cup full of foaming wine, mixed with spices, and he pours it out, and all the wicked of the earth will drink it down to its very dregs. And then Isaiah 51:17 says, awake, awake, rise up, Jerusalem, you who have drunk from the hand of the Lord the cup of his wrath. There are these two cups, a cup of divine blessing and a cup of divine judgment. When Jesus is in the garden, he says, Father, take this cup from me, but then, not as I will, but you will. He resolves to take the cup. Jesus in the garden does the unthinkable. He decides to switch cups with you and I. See, we deserve the cup of judgment, the cup of wrath for all the evil and all the brokenness that we've brought into this world, for the very sin that runs through our veins. But what he did is he resolved to drink the cup of wrath and judgment that we deserve. This is what Jesus will do on the cross. We're not there yet. It's not Good Friday yet, but it's what he'll do. But he resolves in the garden that he will drink that cup, divine wrath and judgment, so that in turn he would grant us the cup of divine fellowship and blessing that we did not deserve. This, my friends, is a story of Maundy Thursday. It's a story of the cup. And it reminds us that because of what Jesus has done, because of what we celebrate this Holy Week, we aren't destined to the cup of divine blessing, of divine judgment. What we are destined to the cup of divine blessing and fellowship and grace. This cup is for us. May we drink deeply of the divine cup that pours out the grace of God. May you be blessed this Holy Week. Please join us this Sunday at 10:30 on Facebook Live and PriceChapel.org. May God be with you.